Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pliant's webinar for CrewWare Live. We're going to spend a little time today taking you through a scenario of an application. We're going to take you through how to set everything up. A couple of housekeeping messages before we start. You are welcome, if you haven't already, to go to plianttechnologies.com/downloads. You will see the current issue of current release of CrewWare. You're welcome to go ahead and download that and play along at home. You'll be able to do virtually everything except what's related to the belt pack, since you won't have any, and they do have to be connected to the system. So the next thing is, if you take a look, you have a control panel as part of the webinar, and you have a number of options in the control panel. One of them, the most important one probably, is if you go in there, you'll see there's a questions, and feel free to ask any questions you like. We will do our best to answer them in real time. We may wait a little bit. That section is coming up and hasn't been covered yet, but we'll try to get to all of your questions. There's also a handout section, and there's a little carrot. If you click on it, it'll open up, and you will see the manual and the brochure. If you'd like to download that, you're welcome to. Of course, they're also available on our website. So let me move over now to Art.
Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to start out with a little poll. We've actually got two polls throughout the presentation. This is the first. The second one's further along in the presentation. This is just to help us get an idea of who our audience is and maybe help us formulate the way we present everything to you. And as Gary mentioned, you can ask questions at any time, so go ahead and do that. But we're going to start out with just a quick poll, and you can choose one poll. And the first poll is, what organization/application are you most involved with or interested in? So this will give us an idea of what kind of applications that you're interested in, so we can maybe tailor what we're talking about towards that. So go ahead and select something. We'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and do that. And then we'll close it and we'll share the results with you, so you as well can see what kind of applications or most of the people are dealing with. So let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and close that poll, and then I'm going to share with you the results. And actually, it's pretty even between theater broadcast and house of worship. So welcome to everyone. And we got a couple of dealers and reps on here as well, and looks like a couple of rental house folks. So anyhow, well, thanks for taking that poll. We're going to hide that, and then I'm going to switch back to Gary, and he's going to go over some of the hardware that goes with the CrewCom system to kind of give us a little bit of an overview. Gary, you're muted.
Thank you, Art. The heart of our system is called the control unit. We call it a control unit, not a base station, because there's no radio in here. This guy has two purposes. It creates our network, that is a unique network, not an IP-based network, that lets us communicate with all of our products. It's available in two sizes. By sizes, I mean the amount of I/O. So the top section is a 2+2, and you notice that it has two 2-wire ports and two 4-wire ports. The bottom connector, the bottom control unit, has 4 of each. Other than that, they're identical. Quick review going, let's start on the left-hand side, Art. We have our IEC power, our synchronization port that we'll get into, that allows us to use multiple systems without a conflict, GPO relay closures. We have our 2 CrewNet network ports. Top one is copper only, the bottom is copper or fiber. We'll go into some distribution things in a moment. Then we have our 2-wire connection, 4-wire connection, the stage announce, an auxiliary in, an auxiliary out, and a LAN connector for the software that we're about to show you. The front of both of these are identical. You can use one, the other, or both together in a system, and there's no difference in the way that they operate. It's just a difference in I/O. Okay, next slide. So here we have 2 different hubs. We have on the top a copper hub, and that actually has 8 copper ports and 1 fiber port. And that can be used for full-on distribution using standard Cat5 wiring. Again, it's not IP-based. It doesn't need to use our hardware, but it can use standard cabling. It also runs on PoE or POC for CrewNet. For the first port, will distribute to other devices. And on the left-hand side, there is local power, which you would need if you have many devices, long cables, or also using fiber, where you would not be able to have the power over the network. The bottom one is actually its sister product. That is a fiber-based hub that has 1 copper and 8 fiber plus power supply. It works exactly the same way, and they can work together. We'll actually show you that later on in an application where both are being used. Okay, the transceiver. These come in 2 flavors. They look identical except for the labeling. One is 2.4 gig, one is 900 megahertz. For the North American market, the 900 megahertz is a great product and has some good advantages. So starting on the bottom on the left, we have a fiber port and a copper port. You can use one or the other, not both. And then there's actually an outputs to be able to daisy chain additional transceivers. That daisy chain can handle up to 8 devices. And that's one of many ways that we can have connectivity to the system. And of course, there is local power available, which you would need again for either a long cable situation or with a fiber. Okay. We have our radio packs. We are actually the only company, as far as we know, that has 2 different packs available. One is 2 volume, one is 4 volume. We'll get into the selection of why that means more than just 2 channel and 4 channel. And they work identically, and you can mix and match them interchangeably. So even if you had a 4-4 control unit with lots of I/O, you can still use a 2-channel, 2-volume pack. And if you have a 2-2 control unit, you can use a 4-volume pack, really independent operation. Okay. All right, and this is our application that we're going to be working with. We've designed a fake award show. I know some of our attendees do some real award shows, and a lot of them, and hats off to you. So we've designed this show using an OB van outside with 2 control units and 1 hub. And then in the truck yard, we've got a couple of transceivers. We have a separate loading dock on the other side of the arena that we're covering. We have backstage, a dressing room. Backstage and a dressing room. And then we're covering the stage left and right, and also covering front of house left and right. And as we take you through this, this means that many people can be on a system simultaneously, depending on their location, and they can also roam from one area to another seamlessly if we give them the rights for that. Okay, so Art, I think I'm ready to go over to CrewWare. So give me 1 second, folks. All right. Okay, so I think everybody can see my CrewWare screen at this point. And this setup, what you see here, is actually what I have live running in my house. What you'll find is you'll notice that I have a control unit and a hub. You'll notice that the second control unit is grayed out, as well as these transceivers across the bottom and on the left. So by way of explanation, what we've done is we built a large system, but the hardware that I have available to me is different than the hardware that we're going to switch to when Art and Mark are both working. And so what you'll see is mine says GR Truck, GR Truck 2, GR Front of House, GR Front of House 2. A little bit hard to read, but in here it actually says MR for Mark Reefus, and these 2 say AG for Art Gonzalez. When we switch over to them, as we're working out of our homes, those will light up and mine will be gray. So we've actually built one configuration that can serve a number of purposes. In this particular case, it's us switching. So what I'm going to do is going to begin by closing this. And I'm going to go offline, and I'm going to go to a blank screen. Hold on. Okay, so what I want to start with is I want to start with the basic configuration. So let me just show you this screen. In here we have fairly traditional file operations that one of them includes upload if I'm connected to a control unit. and we can have a bunch of different options for exporting and printing our port lists and our diagrams. Under edit, we can add devices. We have log settings for maintaining log errors that could be sent to our engineers if needed. And we have something new, user access rights. Those will allow you to lock people out of certain controls. Art and Mark will get into that a little bit later. And again, fairly standard controls. And if you look across the top, our tabs, we have a system diagram, device management, conference management, profile management, group management, the event log, and firmware. I will get into a couple of these tabs, and then the guys will take you through, Mark will take you through conference management, profile, and groups, and Art will take you through firmware and others. So I want to begin by just making a very basic system. At the very bottom here, I'm going to go to my device toolbox, and I'm going to click it, and I open up my available tools. And all I'm going to do is select the control unit, and I'm going to place it on the grid. I'm also going to select the hub, and I'm going to select a transceiver, and I'm going to select another 900 transceiver, and I'm going to select even a 2.4 transceiver. Now, in order to wire these things up on the grid, it's very simple. All I'm going to do is take the copper connection from the control unit and put it into port 1, and that's now active. You may have noticed this little amber exclamation that's telling us it's not got any sync, it's not connected. Once I connected, that went away. So I'm going to simply connect each one of these to a connection on the hub, and the way the system's set up, as long as it recognizes what's on there, it's expecting in port 6 to see a 2.4 transceiver. No problem at all, it's ready. Now, on this one, I'm going to use my second hub because this one I'm going to run out far away from here. I'm going to put this guy out in by the truck, and I'm going to run it on fiber. So I'm going to right click and go to my fiber setting, and now I can see the fiber port is connected here. We would locally power this with power supply, and these guys are being powered. The hub is being powered from the control unit, and then it's supplying power to the other transceivers. I do have choices. For example, I could delete this connection, and I could daisy chain them, and that would be exactly the same operation. So the hub is not required, but if you're doing distribution, as we'll show you in some of the application examples, they really can be handy and quite extensive. And the hubs can also be daisy chained. So we can have a hub that's connected to another hub and connected to another hub. And as you'll see in the applications, we do that fairly often. Once you've created your system diagram, all you need to do is save it, and that's now a valid diagram. So let's go in to an individual unit and look at what's inside. And you'll notice when I mouse over, I get quite a bit of information. But on some of the things, for example, if you look at the very bottom, it says firmware version. Well, we're not actually online and connected. So it doesn't know. It knows it should see a 4.4 there, but it doesn't know what the firmware is. As I go online, I will go back in and show you how that picks up. So for control unit, I'm just going to double click that, open it up, and take you through the control unit settings. We have a long name and a short name. So this can have up to 16 characters. This one shows on the bell pack the short name, and that can have up to 8 characters. And so I've just named this. If I had several control units, and Mark will show you this, I could actually go to a list view and I would see them listed down here. So let's go back, and we've got our awards show. This is simply a diagram as a reminder of what's where. Sync priority we'll talk about as it relates to using multiple control units. We have the ability to both build a system of greater control units up to 4 and make one large system, or we could use 2 completely separate systems and synchronize them together using the sync port without any RF conflicts. And that's the kind of topography that allows us to do things like one of the major broadcasters in New York that has upwards of 385 packs running in one building. Some general features, LCD brightness and timeout, the LAN settings that we'd use. This guy will populate a little bit later with the serial numbers. We have here the front panel headset settings. We also have our 2-wire settings, and Mark will detail that, and our 4-wire settings. Here's our auxiliary in and out, and the auxiliary can be fed to up to 10 individual conferences at once. And an auxiliary out. And then we have our stage announce with associated relay and 4 more GPO relays. So fairly straight ahead, everything can be seen. And if I had a second control unit, I would just go, it would say previous or next, and just go on to the next one. So that's what's available to adjust within the control unit. You're going to want to make your adjustments and save the config. The configuration file, by the way, is called a CCF. So if I just show you here, here's all of my CCF files, and that stands for CrewCom Configuration File. That contains everything about the system. It is the complete system up and running and working. So I'm going to go now to my copper hub. I'm going to open that up, and you'll see again some similar information not populated yet. We can change the name, but there's very little else to change on there. If we go to our transceivers, a little bit different here. I'm going to go to a 900 meg transceiver first, and what you're going to see is, again, we can name it. It will come up and populate. These will be populated here with whatever radio packs are actually connected to it. And then we have some settings in here. So these are the kind of settings you really want to do offline. One of them is the radio band. So this is a new feature that we've added in here. We have the ability to split the bands. Our bands are 902 to 928 full band. And in there, we can do 14 hopping patterns for 14 transceivers. But sometimes you have a situation where you have other people needing to use some of the bands. As an example, we had a situation with a live event where they went in and the venue had worked out with one of the companies that makes these wristbands that work out with LEDs and pulse for the music for the concert. The problem was that this particular system used the 900 band also. So what we did was we gave them 1/2 of the band. We let them work in high, and we selected low for all of our gear. Okay. Now, if I try to select low, it's going to tell me everything needs to be selected to low. So we did that, but then we've added another feature called mixed. And the purpose of mixed is, if we were to take that same scenario and we put in the bowl the low frequency, we could put backstage or in a different area high frequency. Our belt packs would roam back and forth between them, even though they're set to different frequency bands. We also have hopping patterns. The hopping pattern is what determines what frequency you're on. You'll see that in the 900 band, we're up to 14. And we also have transmission power that's adjustable, as well as on the transceiver, they do have 2 antennas, and we can change the functionality of the antenna. Right now, each one is a send-receive. So there's a right antenna, a left antenna, the dual antenna that we're using right now, but we can split them. One is just transmit, one is just receive. So why would we want to do this? Well, let's say we go into a venue and we need a little bit more coverage, and we actually need a Yagi, but we only have one. Well, here's how you would select it. Just use one port, and you'll still get our double sends and all of the same RF advantages that we give you. If I go into the 2.4 transceiver, it's a little bit different in that the full band, the mixed is not available. It's either high or low. We can split it. And we have actually 38 hopping patterns. And generally, we give you 16 to work with, but we can exceed that. And the hopping patterns can be used in different ways and synchronized and work together. So we can have multiple systems in the same venue at the same time. And hopping patterns can even be reused in one system should you be in an area where the first hopping pattern is not in the RF zone. So let's say you used one inside the bowl and then you had somebody else using up some of the RF, you could actually take one out by the truck, reuse the frequency because what's in the bowl isn't getting out by the trucks. So it's pretty versatile. So that's a very basic configuration. So I'm going to close this. And now I'm going to open up our file that we're going to use for today. And this is our fake award show, as you saw on the front. Now I opened it up. We're still offline. You can see in the top right it says offline. Everything's okay, and everything's green, even though I don't have anything connected because we're not live. So this is the configuration that we used, and you can see it's all copper. There are two control units. We have transceivers here, all straight ahead wiring. And we've already assigned a number of conferences to the I/O. So, and at the very bottom, by the way, this is the 2-wire for our auto null, which is a very good auto null circuit. Our 2-wire, we get a lot of compliments on. It's well done. So what you'll see here is the 2 antennas, and if you see these 6 gray dots over each one, those are the available slots. There are 6 users per transceiver that can connect. So I can either directly click this or just close it, and I'll do that. I'm going to close this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go online. And online means I'm going to connect to the system that's on the floor next to me, similar to the ones that Art and Mark have. And this is simply the IP address. I can set it manually or DHCP for the control unit, and I'm going to connect to it. And this is what it looks like connecting. Now, as it starts up, you're going to see our belt packs have come online, and you'll see at the very top a couple of green lights here. That means we've got some belt packs clicked in, and now the system is scanned and found out that these guys are inactive. They've actually given me an error message here, so I know they're inactive, and the log has shown that these devices are missing. Now that's fine because we know that, but we can these error logs, anytime there's an error, it will log it into the computer if you're connected, and those can be sent off to our engineers. And I could, for example, click on this and lots of information comes up. So very, very useful. I'm going to go ahead and I can also clear the event log. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just minimize him because we don't really need him. Okay, and I'm going to bring those down. And now we're live. So you notice we're okay because I cleared the log. I said I know that everybody's good here. I'm going to go back in. Oh, by the way, if you look on the left side, all of our information for our layout on the hardware, you notice these guys have red dots. They correspond to the red dots here and here. That's telling us that those devices are offline. So this is very handy. And the reason we do this is, let's say that you had 36 belt packs and you were really looking at this window with many belt packs, and somebody cut a cable or unplugged something without you knowing it, you would know, the indicator would tell you that you're offline, and you would get the error status up top. So we try to give you a lot of information if we're working. I'm going to go back into the control unit now. And now you will see down here in this area, I have a serial number, our firmware version, the device ID, and the model number. Everything's populated because it's working, because it's connected. We've got our conferences set up, our 2-wire I/O is set up on here, and our 4-wire is set up. So it's all pretty straight ahead, kind of familiar looking, and all of this really gets set up once. Once you've got everything set up and you save the file, you can either load it if you're connected. There is a upload file. So if I made a change in this file or made a new file, I can upload it directly to the control unit. It will need to get repowered, and then it will come up with the new configuration file for you. Or we can save it to the computer we're on and just plug it in with a USB drive right into the front panel. Let's see. So I think for, let me just double check something. Okay, so I just want to go back. So if we're back here. So these two control units that Mark has got set up, and he has two at his house, are synchronized and connected both to the same network. The main control unit, the master, actually controls all of the information and all of the control files in the CCF, not just for other devices and belt packs, but also it will control the second control unit. And when we go into the second control unit, you'll find that it actually can be assigned to all of the same I/O. And the reason we do that is because if you take a 2-wire, 4-wire, and you connect a second control unit, the same system now has 8 of each. It isn't there's 4 over here and 4 over here. Both of those systems can connect to any conference as if it's one larger system. We could also have separated these into 2 separate systems, and the 2 separate systems could synchronize through the sync port right here, and that will allow them to coexist. We would just double check the hopping patterns to make sure there's no conflicts. And we've done this, for example, we had 2 high-profile TV shows at Television City. They were adjacent, but they wanted to be completely separate, but they shared a common corridor. No problem at all. We ran one Cat5 cable to synchronize them, made sure the hopping patterns were happy, and everybody worked. Didn't even know there was a second system. So with that, I think what I'd like to do is let Art take back over and talk a little bit about some of our device distribution and powering.
All right, so let me switch over to my CrewWare. And basically, I'm going to kind of pick up where Gary left off. You should be able to see my CrewWare at the moment. And you'll notice, as Gary mentioned, we each have our own systems, but we're using the same configuration file. So what that means for me is I don't have a second CU, and you can see all of Gary's RTs and all of Mark's RTs are all grayed out, but now mine are lit. So the AG stage left, AG stage right are all lit because that's what I have active here. I only have one pack on at the moment. So that's why you see the green dot above the transceiver. If I hover over that, you will see the name of the pack and some of its details. Actually, it gives you a lot of details, device ID, etc. A lot of information about that pack there. So one of the things I wanted to point out was this is a good example of what we call over-configuring. And the reason we like to talk about this is there may be situations where you go into an event or even doing a, putting an install in where you can actually over-configure so that you don't need to go back in later and update your configuration file. Let's say, for instance, you're going to add another transceiver at some point. Let's say it's in this case, I know I'm going to add all those transceivers at some point. So I go ahead and deploy my control unit, I deploy my hub and whatever transceivers that I can plug in. And then as I go and I'm building my event and so forth, I can just plug things in as I get to that point, and then they'll come online. This is actually a new feature that we've added in 1.8.0.3, what we call hot plugging or hot swapping. So that allows you to not only add, but also take away devices without having to reboot the system. The other thing that it does, it's really great, especially for large installs where you may have devices deployed all over a facility, let's say a stadium or something. Good example I can think of is a stadium, NRG Stadium in Texas, where they have a hub that's up in a booth that's probably, a good half a mile away from the control unit. So in order to reboot the system, you'd have to go up to that hub and unplug it and replug it back in. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just repower the control unit and the whole system will reboot. So anytime you have to do a reboot, it's much easier now. And also that adds on the ability to do hot swapping. As Gary mentioned also, as you can see in this particular example, everything could be run off of PoE, or what we call POC, Power over CrewNet. There doesn't have to be, unless there's very long cable runs, that you wouldn't have to have a local power supply. However, if you were to want to switch over to fiber or something, you would have to have a local power supply, obviously. So this is talking a little bit about the hot plugging and adding devices and so forth, and what we call over configuring. I'm also going to mention some stuff about the actual packs. We are still in live mode here. So I'm actually connected through the LAN into my system, which is over here behind me, and you can see a couple of packs. Down here in what we call the radio pack farm, I actually show 2 packs. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my second pack here, the one labeled Mo. And the Mo pack is actually, I've got a low battery because I did that on purpose so you can kind of see what it looks like when there's a low battery, and you'll see it change colors. As you can see, the 2 packs show up here, and the way you know that they're live is in the case of the jack pack here. It has a green glow around it. That's telling me that everything's good, no problems, and the jack pack is online. You saw when it wasn't online that it was actually not green around the edge. It was kind of grayed out a little bit. You'll notice the Mo pack here is actually blinking because the battery is low. Now, eventually, in probably a couple of minutes or so, maybe even shorter amount of time, this will turn red. So as the battery starts to dissipate, it will turn red, and that will not only show you that this is a low battery here. Oh, we got it here. A couple of things happened. It turned red around the edges. Down here in my error log, you'll see low battery alert. So I got an alert in my log. And in addition to that, if you look up here by the antenna or the transceiver, that dot turned red. So now from a very quick glance, I can, let's say I haven't been really paying attention. I look back at my CrewWare and I see a couple of reds on there. So that actually lets me know, hey, there's something wrong. I've got a pack that's running low, or if it was offline, you would also see that. So that's great indication of what's going on. Now, if I double click on a pack, what you will see is actually it opens up the real representation of the pack. So this is a real-time representation of what's going on with this particular pack. This is our 2-volume pack here. As we mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, there's 2 types of packs. There's 2-volume and 4-volume. And Mark's going to go into a lot more detail about the profile. Just keep in mind that even though these are 2-volume, what we call 2-volume or 2-channel, they are not tied to specific channels or conferences. It's very flexible on how you can assign your conferences to the pack. As you can see here, there's a Pyro conference and a Director conference, and those are assigned to this particular pack. But back to what we're talking about in the live mode, when looking at the pack, you'll see when I press the talk button, you'll see the talk button light up here on the software. Same thing if I adjust the volume or something, you'll see exactly what's going on the display show up on the software. I can even press the triangle button here and get the secondary menu, which is the secondary menu on the pack itself, and get even more information like remaining battery time, the name of the pack, the profile, and so forth. All that information showing up here in real time. Other things that you can change in real time are user level settings. So let's say Jack, calls in and says, hey, I need some more side tone. I can't really hear myself well enough. You can come over and adjust his side tone from here, and in real time, it will affect what he's doing wherever he is. As long as he's on the system, you can change that. As I mentioned, Mark's going to talk more about profiles, but you can deploy profiles from here. You can also do that from the pack if you need to. But the really great thing about the software from this standpoint and the pack is really the marriage between the two and being able to look at everything that's going on that pack in real time. And it can be any pack. Click over. If I had multiple packs here, I just double click on them and I can see all the information about that pack very, very quickly. So that makes it pretty handy. Now, one of the things to back up a little bit, let me go back to the system diagram. As you can see, there's 2 control units on this particular configuration file. And when Mark logs in, you'll see both of them be active. But one thing I do want to mention is Gary mentioned that the transceiver determines how many users can be on an antenna or a transceiver. In our case, it's 6 per antenna. So for instance, this stage left, stage right, you can have up to 12 users on the stage area because that's basically 2 transceivers of total of 6 per transceiver. So that determines the area coverage and the number of users in that area. However, the control unit determines the total number of packs on the system. So in this case, I only have 1 control unit on, so I could have up to 18 packs. So it's 18 packs per control unit. If my system was fully up and running and I had 2 control units going, I could have up to 36 packs. You can do that 2 more times. So 18 users per control unit. So again, the control unit determines how many packs you can have on the system. The antenna determines how many users you can have in that RF space. Okay, now when you get a pack, I've got a pack here that hasn't been paired yet, so I'm going to show you how we pair a pack to the system. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and since it hasn't been paired, I think I unpaired it from the system. We'll see. So I'm going to turn it on, and hopefully you can see here. If you can't read it, I'll tell you what it says. Basically, it comes up and says, no pairing information available. Please pair your radio pack to the control unit. Now, the way we do that is every pack comes supplied with a USB cable, which is a standard USB connection to a USB micro. And on the side of the pack, there's a little cap. You remove that cap, and then you essentially plug in your USB connector to that. And when I do that, what it does is on the actual control unit, you probably can't see it, but it says start pairing. And then on the actual unit itself, hopefully you can see it. Hopefully my cable is long enough where you can see it. But you can sort of see, it says, in case you can't see it, it actually says production assistant and a number 7 right below it. If I turn that, my volume knob, you will see that it actually toggles between, there's only 2 profiles on here, but what I'm doing is I'm selecting what profile I want to put on that pack. And Mark will explain all about profiles, but you basically create all your profiles ahead of time. So that way, when you plug in, you pair your pack. I'm going to select this one as Larry. So this is going to be Larry's pack, and I've selected Larry's pack, and now it's paired to the system. Yes, sir.
Perhaps you could unshare your screen for a moment, and you'll get a much larger view of you so they can get a better shot of the display.
Okay. Unfortunately, I just finished pairing. I'll do it all over again just so we can see it. Let's see here. I will stop sharing the application. And can you see my camera now?
Looks good.
Okay, so I'm gonna redo it so you can kind of see the screen better. Basically, what I'm doing is plugging in. The power was off in this case. It can be either off or on. Either way, it will go into the pairing mode. It doesn't really matter. So when I plug it in, it comes up and it says checking the firmware. One other good thing to remember is all of your firmware has to match on the system. So if I have a big rental system or something that's going out, they all have to be on the same firmware. In this case, it's 1.8.0.3. But when I plugged it in, it said checking the firmware, and then it gave me this screen here. And it's basically asking me to select a profile. I know it's kind of hard to see, and it's kind of blurry, but anyhow, it says select a profile. But if I turn the knob, you should be able to see it change between the profiles. I'm going to select Larry. And all I do is I hit one of the function buttons where it says enter, and now it's basically uploaded that profile to the pack. Now, when I unplug the pack and put the cap back on, it will automatically power down. So once it powers down, and you can now see, let me go back and I will share my screen again. Since I've paired it, now you should see down here at the bottom, I'll bring it up. This is actually a new screen as well, by the way, for those of you using older versions. This is basically showing me all the packs that are now paired to the system but haven't been active yet. So down here where it says Radio Pack 13, this is the pack that I just paired to the system. It's not online yet. It's in this registered area here, but it hasn't been made active. This is great because it's very easy to pair, especially if you have a lot of packs. If you pair a lot of packs to a control unit, you'll be able to see if there's any stray ones out there that you forgot about that you had paired, so that you can unpair them. And you can unpair them by right-clicking, and there's a selection here for unpair. And then it will ask you, are you sure? And then you can unpair it. But one thing to mention, you notice when I paired it, the actual pack name came up as Radio Pack 13. That's on purpose. What it did is it took the last 2 digits of the serial number and made that the actual pack number. So it says Radio Pack 13. So what I'm going to do is I want to change that pack name. And just so you understand what pack name is all about, pack name, all it is really just a display name. It's like putting a piece of tape on the front of your pack, which a lot of people still do that as well. But it essentially, all it does is it puts a pack name on the display. And you'll see that when I double click. You can see now it's online. So if I double click on it, you'll see it says pack 13 here on the display. That's exactly what it says on the actual unit itself. But if you come up here to long name, short name, and now I'm going to call that one Larry. because that's what I assigned as the profile. And since they're both fairly short names, we'll make them both the same. But now you notice the display on the actual unit changed to Larry. So once again, the pack name is really not tied into the profile. There's the pack name, which is specific to every pack. And then you have a profile, which Mark's going to explain. But as you can see here on the display, it did change to Larry on the display as well. Okay, so we got that out of the way. So that's the packs and how you pair a pack to the system. A little bit more information about the pack. Next thing I'm going to mention, and Gary touched on it a little bit, was the hopping patterns. And as he mentioned, and by the way, the way I'm getting to these, in case you didn't know, if you want to get to a device's more detailed view, you simply just double click on that. And that's one way to get there. There's many different ways to get around, but that's one way I prefer to go. But if you see here, this one is set to 13. Since we're in live, we can't, while we're live, change hopping patterns. We don't want to be changing anything RF-wise while we're live. So I won't be able to change hopping patterns. But as Gary mentioned, the whole purpose of being able to manually change hopping patterns is to customize a system, especially when you're getting into environments where there's two systems going together, which is what I'm going to talk about. But when you go ahead and you build a basic system, it automatically assigns those hopping patterns for you. You don't have to worry about that. Only if you need to go in and change them can you manually change them. So let me switch over to the PowerPoint real quick, just so I can show you a drawing. And this is essentially a system where I assisted the production on this particular event. And what this was is I mentioned NRG Stadium earlier. And if you look on the left, this is the actual system that resides within NRG Stadium. And this is what they used for their game day production. So all of their in-between quarter, halftime, pregame, postgame, anything going on event-wise within the stadium, cameras, audio folks, people on the, production assistants down on the field and so forth. That's all handled by the CrewCom system that you see here on the left. So that's the NRG Stadium. As you can see, they have quite a few transceivers. Just kind of as an idea of what we're doing here, this shows the location, and then this shows the hopping pattern. So as you can see here, Service Southwest has a hopping pattern of 6. On the south 15-yard line, there's a Yagi antenna, and it's a hopping pattern 9, and so on and so forth. So you can see all the different hopping patterns. You'll see what we tried to do, and just to note again, as Gary mentioned, there's only 14 hopping patterns within 900 meg. By the way, both of these systems are 900 meg. So in order to do that, you basically have to do a lot of coordination in terms of the hopping patterns that you're using. That plus the sync, which I'll tell you more details on. So the first thing we did is we tried to keep as many as we could on the NRG Stadium on odd number hopping patterns. And then with the Thursday Night Football crew, we tried to put as many as we can on even numbers. So that's why you see pretty much everything in the bowl area as even numbers for the NFL network and odd numbers for the NRG Stadium. Now, you see some deviations to that because we ran out of hopping patterns. We have just a total of 14. So as Gary mentioned, we can start reusing hopping patterns. As an example, the NFL network had an outside set where they have a crew outside. They do a whole pregame show from the parking lot. Essentially, it's completely outside of the stadium. So it's totally out of the RF space of the stadium itself. So we actually reused some of the hopping patterns from the stadium system. So we use 7, 13, and 1, which are used, as you can see here within the stadium itself. No issues whatsoever, even though we reuse those hopping patterns. But within the stadium, even though we had even hopping patterns for the NFL network, odd patterns for the NRG Stadium system, we still have to synchronize the systems. We're using a frequency hopping scheme. So basically within the 900 megahertz band, we are essentially hopping across that entire band continuously 100 times a second. So if you have two systems that are not synchronized, what will happen is eventually they'll drift a little bit and they'll start stepping on each other. So just by having even odd hopping patterns is not quite enough. So what we have to do is we have to synchronize the systems. And in order to do that, Gary showed you the sync input port on the back of the control unit. What we did is we actually took a CrewNet port on the NFL system or the NFL network system, And we ran that from a fiber on the CrewNet. I think it was off of one of their fiber hubs, which we don't show on this here, but they have a fiber hub. And we ran that to the NRG stadium to the sync input. So key thing here, there's sync inputs on both the CUs. You don't go from sync in to sync in. You don't go from sync to sync. You basically, and that's really a good thing to do, because you can take any any CrewNet port and run that into the sync input. So if this control unit from the NRG stadium was nowhere near the truck for NFL Networks, you can very easily just take any port off of the CrewNet system and be able to plug that into that sync port, and everything works okay. So that's the syncing of two systems. And then let's see, the next thing we have is we have one more application, which I'm going to pass it back over to Gary and actually let him talk about a Monday Night Football system that was also deployed not that long ago. So Gary?
Thanks, Art. So Monday Night Football and I think Sunday and Thursday Night Football all use our systems. One of the reasons is they are extremely RF heavy. They've got everything from in-ear monitors to wireless parabolic reflectors picking up everything. So being in the 900 band really helps them. They get great coverage and they can just kind of drop it in. So the way they have the system set up, if you look here at Art's diagram, you will see 3 control units. The 3 control units are there because they have multiple users and also multiple I/O. And for backup, it's in a broadcast truck. It never hurts to have some extra gear just in case. Those 3 control units connect to a local copper hub. The copper hub is putting together on the same network the 3 control units plus the 2 hubs that they're using, again, inside the truck, that are then feeding out fiber to the field. And what they've done is, if you take a look, you'll see out of port 7 on the top copper hub, you'll see a green line that goes down to the bottom, and that's the local transceiver that's right outside the truck for the truck yard. And then if you go and look, you'll see the rest are fiber. And so what they do is they run fiber out to the field. Now, one of the things that they've been doing is they run fiber out, but they change the SFP. Now, the SFP is the fiber port. They are changeable. We supply them with a dual fiber LC connector, and what some people have different modes of operation, and some use multi-mode. We supply it without multi-mode, just the standard connection. And we supply it that way because we understand that we can support it, but our customers should put everything from multi-mode to a single fiber that multiplexes itself. And the reason they do that is, even though the stadiums have lots of fiber, they were already running out because everybody's jumping on the fiber bandwagon. So they run strands out, a single strand to each transceiver, and they run it out to their distribution box on the field. They have a multi-core, and then they break it out from there. And so they have a couple of those around the stadium. They'll take 4 of those transceivers. Those will be in the stadium proper. And if you take a look on the right side, you will notice the top 2 have a green line as well as the purple line. So what they do is they run fiber to the first one, they're running power to all of these, and then they daisy chain the second one. And so they do that, and you'll see that at the bottom. So one is on the home side, one is the away side. They put 4 in the transceivers in the arena. It covers everything that they need. The rest of the devices are around the facility. Some of them are in hallways back by the dressing rooms, but they really can spread them out. They generally have 12 to 14, sometimes a little bit more people maximum in the bowl itself. And they get full coverage because with the 4 transceivers, you could get 24 people. So they've always got enough coverage. The range on the 900 does cover the entire field. So this is kind of their standard package. They set it up this way every single week, and it just works, gets them where they need to be.
All right. Thanks, Gary. We're going to now pass it over to Mark. You see on the actual applications slide here, you'll see a list of conferences and Radio Pack profiles. And we're going to have Mark run you through those, and so you can get a better idea of what's going on. And hold on, Mark, I will pass it over to you. And we are now over to you. So you should be able to bring up your display. There you go. Looks good.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. My name is Mark, and I'm going to run you through a couple of the features here. And first to start out with is we're going to talk about how to build a conference. So the conference is one of the building blocks of the entire system. This is the conversation, or also known as a party line, or was referred to as a channel back in the day with the earlier intercom systems. We call it a conference, with which it's a kind of akin to a summing bus. Multiple, the conferences can get assigned across many different profiles throughout the entire system. So right now I have a bunch of conferences that are already built that I went ahead and built when I made the system. And to add a conference, you simply push the button, and now it's going to come up with a generic name. And like Gary had mentioned before, we have two names. We have a long and a short name. This long name can handle 16 characters. This short name can handle 8 characters. And then next to that, we have the ability to allow that conference to support ISO, which I'll explain momentarily. And then high density enable, that's a feature that will be coming up in the future, but is not available right now. So to simply name this, I give it a single click, and I can name it Art. Go to the next one, and now I will see Art here internally on my computer, and Art will see the short name on his belt pack. So all of these have now been built, and I have a bunch of conferences to begin working with, and several of them have ISO allowed on them, so they will be able to support that feature. I'll show you momentarily. Next place I'd like to go to is our system diagram, and I'll double click on the master control unit to get in there. And now I'm looking at the master control unit. I'm going to close our little pack farm down here so I can see more of what's going on here. And within the control unit, Gary showed you everything up here, but down here we're going to talk about 2-wire. This is where my drop-down menu is for each of the conferences that I created. And I can assign any conference to any of these ports, and I can double them if I choose to. I can have Art going in and out on several 2-wire ports. I can also have Art coming in on a 2-wire port and going out on a 4-wire port. Continuing on with 2-wire, I can then select what type of 2-wire it is. And we have RTS channel 1, 2, AudioComm and ClearComm. I can rename the port if I choose to. I can adjust the level in and out. I can enable call to be received by the belt packs on the CrewComm system, or I can enable call to be transmitted by the packs on the CrewComm system. I could also have the packs on the CrewComm system. I could actually have the software, do mic kill enable across that 2-wire from here. Echo cancellation is turned on in this particular example, and I'm able to null the port from this area of the control unit. Below is 4-wire. I have 4 2-wires here because I have a 4x4 control unit, and I have 4 4-wires here. These are all assigned to multiple communication ports that are on the matrix perhaps, or someplace else via 4-wire. I turn it on or off. It is duplex, and I can rename this port name if I choose to. I can turn on echo cancellation from here and adjust my input and outbound level from this point in the system. While I'm in the control unit, I also have the ability to pull in from the outside world via our auxiliary port, which is a 1/4-inch TRS jack. I'm going to pull in program music from there, and that's been assigned to its own conference name of program. And then I can also take an output and assign that, and perhaps have the director's party line, or conference as we call it, sent out from this auxiliary output to some other place downstream. I also have the ability here to take and set up relays. I've set up one relay as 911, and I'll show you what that's going to do in our profile management shortly. And all of our GPO relays, all 5 of them are functional in 1.8. So as we move along here now, I'm going to go across our tabs to profile management. Now, there's multiple ways to see things in CrewCom. You can do list views, and then you can double click on things. Single clicking on this will expand it out to be able to get a 10,000 foot view perhaps of what that profile looks like. Then double clicking on the profile allows me to drill down deeper into it. I can then begin navigating across it using the next and previous buttons across the top here, or I go back to list view and go straight to Larry's profile where I want to be. So Larry is an important player in our show tonight, and Larry's got a 4-knob belt pack. His long name is Larry, and there's, again, 16 characters there, 8 characters here for a short name. This is the type of belt pack that Larry is using, which is a 4-knob, 900 megahertz CrewCom belt pack. That CrewCom belt pack has access to all of these radio transceivers that are available on the system at this time that are 900 megahertz. If I want to deny Larry access to any place, I can simply go in here and blank out that particular radio transceiver, and now he will no longer be able to go into that area and log into that radio transceiver. That allows you to manage who goes where and what slots are being used by your users on your CrewCom system. The normal mode, again, is for a future feature that will be implemented down the road. Call alert addresses whether or not you're going to be dealing with an audible tone in your earpiece, a vibration of the belt pack, or both. In this case, it defaults to both, and I left it as such. So the user will experience a vibration of their belt pack along with a tone in their ear when they're being called from any system. Down here, each of the buttons are represented, A through D, and I now go in here and select which conference is going to appear on Larry's button. The profile is really the heart of the system. This is where the rubber hits the road and where the user's experience is defined within this software. This is what enables us through CrewWare to assign each user their own experience or profile, or create a profile that will be shared by a group of people. We find a lot of broadcasters tend to share profiles amongst groups of users, where a lot of live event people like the NFL, like some of the other power users that use our CrewCom system, they'll create individual profiles for each person to have their own experience and put things where they need to be for that person. Beneath the conference selection button, we now have the button mode status, and this enables us to either disable that button so it's a listen only channel, or it becomes momentary or latched. Also to mention in latched, if you have a button set to latched, if you push the button and hold it, you can speak and then take your finger off of it and it'll be momentary. Push it, take your finger off of it, it will be latched. Here is where you assign ISO. ISO is our expanded version of wireless talk around. It's a selective talk around. It allows you to assign certain users rights to be able to talk over top of an existing conference. In this particular case, I have ISO enabled on Stage Manager Conference. So everyone who's monitoring that conference will hear the Stage Manager party line, and only the users that have ISO enabled in their profiles will be able to talk over top of the Stage Manager Conference. When ISO is pressed by pushing the volume button on the belt pack, you engage ISO and it dims the backing conference, and then your ISO conference is opened up and you're allowed to talk over top of it. Down here further, we have our function buttons. On Larry's profile, he's able to push stage announce and talk through the stage announce jack on the back of the control units. And on his second function button, he has access to the relay, which enables him to hit the 911 button, which in this particular scenario, I envisioned a light or some kind of an alert that would go off with security to have them come to help out Larry and anybody else who hits the 911 button. So as we go from this card view, as you know, and Gary had discussed all of these settings down here, which are part of the user settings that carry and follow through the profile. As we go to list view, now Lou also has a relay available to him. And what I did for here is I envisioned Larry as being an important user and Lou is also an important user. And he's got a stage manager on his conference on D, as does Larry, and that's what they talk to each other with. So if I double click on Lou, Lou also has, he does not, but now he does. I'm going to assign ISO to Lou's stage manager channel. And when I hit upload the changes, Lou's pack will blank out for a couple of seconds. He'll get a gas gauge, and then it'll come back up, and he will now have that feature enabled on his belt pack, where he'll be able to talk directly to anybody who has ISO enabled on their stage manager channel. So over here, we have the profile group, and these are all set up in group management. The purpose of these is so that when you're operating the system during a gig, it will take and automatically assign belt packs into different groups to help give you a better way of visually identifying who's who and where they are. Now, as you'll notice, I have a different view here than my colleagues had set up. I'm in icon view. Now, I right-clicked on this bar here, and I got into this drop-down menu. If I hit the tile view, that will go to the view that Art and Gary were primarily using during their presentations, which is quite comprehensive and has a lot of information available in it. I just went to icon view because I wanted to get a little more screen real estate open to be able to see this display here, which also can get expanded out and made bigger as needed. So in order to set up all of these colors and to group all of the belt packs together, I need to start building groups. So I'm going to go over to the group management tab, click on that once, and this is the list view for group management. If I double click on production, I'm now into the detailed view for this. And this particular group, production, now gives me all of the profiles that are available for me to assign to it, where they're presently assigned to. And then it shows me what profiles are assigned to production. So production assistants assigned there, lights, etc. And as you can see here, this is the production group. Here is the corresponding group, and Art's in production right now. He's using the OBTW profile, oh, by the way. So if I want to take and move Art over to the Pyro channel, what I can do is find Pyro, which would be next, go over here, grab that profile, which is OBTW, click on it once to highlight. Now I can double click on this and it'll come over to here, or I can use this arrow. And there it goes. Now Art's automatically moved down here to Pyro, and he's vacated his slot area in production in this readout. So, and I can do that if I want to put it back. Very simply go to the previous one, go up here, grab it, and there we go. So Art's back where he was in the first place. Go back to tile view, and you can see again what you're dealing with there and what you're going to be working with. So all three of the groups are available here. I can figure out what color I want to use for them for the bar, and then for the text. If I wanted to change this color, I could go to this green and change the text to white if I chose to. And it's all real time, right away, all there for you. So again, all these tabs across the top are how you're navigating through CrewWare primarily, and where you're going to go. So I'm going to go back to the system. And as we've all described, my RTs are lit up here over in Georgia, along with my secondary control unit and the hub that I have plugged in here, and all the other gentlemen's RTs are not lit up at this time. So I've shown you all the way up to profile group and got you set up there to be able to utilize those. Profiles have been shown, and I think that's about all that I had to discuss with you all today.
Hey, Mark, thanks, much appreciated. We'll switch back, and I'm going to switch back over to my screen. Before we jump into this application, I do want to cover a little bit more on CrewWare. There's one last piece to CrewWare that I do want to mention. Actually, there's a couple of things I do want to mention. One of them, and Mark has mentioned several times about the configuration file, creating all the conferences and profiles and everything. All of that gets stored into a configuration file or a .ccf file. And Gary mentioned and showed how you can save that and upload it to the control unit. I just want to mention that each one control unit stores only one configuration file. As a matter of fact, we added in the latest version the ability to see which configuration file is on the control unit. So just kind of keep that in mind. So as, for instance, as Mark was making all of his changes to groups and conferences and adding conferences, changing profiles and everything, all of that was being stored in the control unit while he was doing it. You don't have to make all those changes and then do an upload and a reboot and things like that. It all automatically gets uploaded into the configuration file that's on the control unit. Now, since he was using 2 control units, or if you use more than one, the configuration file resides on the master control unit. So it only resides on one control unit. The other secondary, tertiary, whatever, how many control units you have, those basically need to delete all of the configuration files that may have been on it off of it, and basically it gets all of its information from that master control unit. So I just wanted to point that out. That's an important thing to remember. Now, one of the things that's part of CrewWare, when you download CrewWare, not only are you getting the CrewWare software, but you're also getting the firmware that goes on all the hardware of part of your CrewCom system. So I'm going to show you real quick on the ways you would update your CrewCom system. In this particular case, this is the 1.8.0.3, which is what's on our website right now. Which, by the way, I will mention also, since I mentioned the website, if you go to that downloads page, you'll also see the ability to go to another page where it has all the previous versions. So if you need to take your version, take it back to a specific version to match up with somebody else's system, you can do that as well. And that's just the CrewWare application. So all you're doing is you're downloading that application, and then you're doing your firmware upgrade or your firmware downgrade, so to speak, down to the previous version that you want to get to. So anyhow, how you get there is along the top, we've talked about all the different tabs, but if you go to the firmware tab, what you'll see is 2 tabs within there. That'll give you the name of the firmware version. That's what's currently running on this CrewWare that we're running. And you'll have 2 tabs, one that says network devices and one that says USB devices. There's 2 ways to update your firmware, and the 2 ways are through the network, and one is directly through a USB connection into your computer. Now, I'll mention a caveat there, and I'll go ahead and go on the network tab and click Show Network Devices. You'll notice that only my transceivers show up there. So currently, the only thing you can update over the network is your RTs, your transceivers. So you can't update any other types of devices through the network. And this makes sense, at least initially, because if you have a permanent install, let's say a theater or somewhere, a church or something where your transceivers are up in the ceiling, you don't want to have to carry a laptop up there, or have somebody bring the transceiver down and plug it in and so forth. So we can actually update through the network. And the way that works is once I've selected show all network devices, in this case, I would just click update listed devices, and it'll go through and it'll basically update them in sequence. So if I had multiple transceivers, it would show them all and it would update them all in sequence. And it takes a little while, so that's not why we're not going to show it right here. Same thing with your USB devices. If I click the USB tab, you'll notice nothing is showing up there. However, if I come over and I plug in, let's say I want to update this pack, all I'm doing is I'm taking that same cable that I used to pair with, and I've plugged it into my PC. I can use a USB hub, and so I can do multiple packs at a time if I want to, or I could do an RT and a pack at the same time. We do recommend you do the control unit separately and first, but you can do multiple devices on a USB hub if you want. Plugging into the same connector that I used to pair, when I do plug it in, you should get the standard tones that you hear from Windows when you do plug in a device. So now that this is plugged in and hopefully is recognized by Windows, I come over here and I hit scan for devices. And now I will see this pack, and you can confirm that it's pack based on its serial number, 1613. And that's what's on the serial number on the back of the unit. And then there's two ways to do it. On the device itself, you probably can't see it. There's actually a yes, no. It says, do you want to update the device? I can hit yes here, or I come over and I just hit update on the actual software itself. When I do that, it basically uploads the firmware. For the radio pack, it takes about 10 minutes or so, it updates it. Then if you're doing multiple ones, it'll do it even quicker because you're doing multiples at the same time. Then once it's done updating, you simply unplug the pack. And then what you typically do is just to confirm that it actually took, you can plug it back in and hit scan device for devices again. And you can confirm that it actually did update to 1.0.3. It said update failed there because I basically aborted the update by pulling the cord on there. So that's how you do a firmware update. The convenient thing is it is all part of the CrewWare software. So that's a very easy way to do that, and that's done through the software. So let's switch back over, and we're going to talk back to applications. We got a couple applications, and then we'll be pretty much finished. So let's go back, and we're going to bring Mark back online here to talk about an industrial application. And let me switch over to my PowerPoint so we can see his layout. So Mark, you good there? You got the layout and everything? And I'm going to help Mark out and kind of point out things as we go here.
Yeah, starting over on the right side of your screen there, we have Area 52. And just the 10,000 foot view of this application is it's a cleaning application for an industrial facility where they have an area that has to be closed off during a portion of the cleaning and isolated from the outside world. Now there's that wall represented there between 52 and 51. And in Area 52, we have the computer at the top, and then we have the master control unit for Area 52, because Area 52 has two control units. One's over to the left there in Area 51's RF space, and then over back in Area 52, we have the master control unit and the hub. And then we have two circuits going out to two daisy-chained sets of radio transceivers. And all these radio transceivers inside there are set to even hopping patterns, as is the Area 52 radio transceiver outside of the door. And that is connected directly into one of the ports on Area 52's control unit, which is the secondary control unit, once again, for Area 52, that is only connected into Area 52 by one cable. That one CrewNet cable, our proprietary network, is carrying all the conferences, all of the synchronization, everything is going down that cable. The second control unit for Area 52 has two wire connections into it and is synchronized via CrewSync to the master control unit for Area 51. Area 51 has three radio transceivers and a hub, has a computer hooked up to it for monitoring and controlling of the system through CrewWare, and is connected to a matrix via 4-wire connections, which are represented with those blue lines to the box matrix there. This is basically two separate systems, and also the radio transceivers in Area 51, I'm sorry, are set to odd hopping patterns. So in the event that there's a period of time that the system is not connected to each other and it's not synchronized, it can still operate, and we have a high success rate with it that way. Once it's synchronized, it'll be locked in rock solid and not prone to any type of problems at all. And once you disconnect that CrewNet connection between Area 51 and 52, 52 becomes isolated from the outside world and continues to operate. And Area 51 continues to operate on its own. And I think that covers this particular application.
Okay, great. We've got one more quick poll that we'll do, and then we'll move on to the last couple of applications, and then we should be done. So let me go ahead and launch this poll. And the second poll kind of give us an idea of what kind of products that you're using. This one is, what other wireless intercom products are you using or most familiar with? Select one. So we'll let it give everybody a little bit of time to select so we can get an idea. Obviously, a lot of you may use multiple systems, but just pick one that you're most familiar with. Okay, I will close out that poll and we'll share the results of that poll. And looks like a lot of people are familiar with ClearComm's FreeSpeak and also Readle Bolero. And looks like one or two others out there as well. So thanks for answering that poll. I'm going to hide that poll and then we're going to go back to our applications. And I'm going to hand it back over to Gary so he can talk about this broadcast application.
So this is actually a real installation. It's a very large broadcaster. Many of you understand a lot of our customers don't actually want us to use their names, so we'll just call this large broadcaster. A couple of things about this. This is a facility that has hundreds of packs in it. They have many studios operating, and between a combination of synchronization using 2.4 and 900, which work great together, and antenna placement, plus you know, a little bit of design work, we've gotten lots of these studios running together all at the same time. So if we look at, this is just one studio, we'll call this one 3K, and you'll notice there are 4 control units. Each of the 4 control units goes to a local hub, and then you will see that there are additional hubs on the system. As I said earlier, hubs can go into hubs. We can daisy chain the hubs and they work just fine. But what you notice about this is there are no daisy chaining on here at all of any of the RTs. Each one is a home run directly into a hub, and they stagger physically the way the transceivers are located. So even if we lost something, we still have coverage in an area. This is pretty much their baseline configuration. It's used throughout the facility, but you know, this allows us to go past, you know, we talked about 18 per control unit, 18 users, and 72 per system. So this is one system that can handle 72 units, but that's one studio within a floor that has many studios, and we have other floors, and each one of them has the ability to be this big, even though a particular system may have its capacity. We have the ability to put many of these together, and a little bit of engineering expertise, we can make that happen. So one of the housekeeping things I'd like to point out is that if any of you have an application that you need assistance with, the 3 of us or our engineers are always available to help you figure out exactly what hardware, what configuration, what settings you need to achieve special configurations, whether it's using hopping patterns, different types of antennas, or band splitting. We pretty much have a solution for you. Okay, Art?
Okay, thanks, Gary. We have one more application to talk about, and this is a house of worship application. And this particular application is a real world application, a real customer of ours who's actually adding on to their system now. So that's actually kind of where it made its way into this presentation, because it's very relevant for what's going on right now. And the purpose of showing this particular application is to show how flexible the system is and how it can grow with your needs. This is a church called Grace Church based out of Maryland Heights, Missouri, in the St. Louis area. And they came to us a while ago looking for a solution, a wireless solution, to essentially add on to their 2-wire system, which they had in the church for quite some time. So we went in, did a demo, did a whole heat mapping and everything worked great. They have a 900 meg system. And what I wanted to do is kind of show you a little bit about how this system is deployed. Now, the way it's currently deployed is, and this is a very basic layout, there's essentially the main part of the church where their main services take place. They have a nice atrium chapel that's kind of out, real nice area, kind of an open area. And then you go quite a bit distance away, and I believe it's downstairs even a little bit, a place called the Foundry. And just recently they approached us and said, okay, we have our current system, which is one RT. So their current system is this one RT, and they have 6 packs in the main stage area. And then they've got a 2x2 control unit, which is 2 2-wire, 2 4-wire, which is attached to their 2-wire system that it currently existed. And that works great. They love it and everything. But so we want to add some communications into the foundry area. And then along the same lines, at some point, we want to be able to add on to the atrium chapel. Not right away, but maybe eventually. And you'll see this is where we were talking about doing the over configuring. And this is where this will come into play. So they basically bought 1 more transceiver and 3 more packs. So now what they're going to do is they're going to run a fiber from their control unit to this foundry location, which is, I think, about 1,000, 1,500 feet away. So it goes beyond the 300-meter spec for copper. So they're going to run fiber out to the foundry. And then, as you'll see by the configuration file, we're going to set it up to where, even though it's the same control unit and the same system, they could actually be running 2 services at the same time, each having their own communication system set up using conferences and profiles. So let's see how they do that. This is the current system, 1 control unit, 1 transceiver, 6 packs, and they're using 2 volume packs, by the way. As you can see here, their conferences is very basic. They just have 2 conferences, 2 party lines, 1 for video and 1 for just direction, channel B party line, which is for direction. And then if you look at their list of profiles, you see they've got quite a bit of profiles set up here. The reason being for that, and this is a great, I never even really thought of it until they started using it, but the way they work is they primarily use volunteers. So one of the things they do is they've created many profiles so that as volunteers come in, as you can see all the different names and so forth here, I like bird dog, but anyhow, the volunteer will come in and they'll basically, as we showed you on the pack, you can dial up a profile, and then they'll dial up the profile and hand that pack out to somebody, and now it operates exactly how they like to have it operate. The buttons where they need them, volume controls, everything is all set up just the way they like to do it. Okay, so they have a bunch of different profiles that they use. Now, when they came to us and said, we want to add 3 more packs. Now, we want to add 3 more packs, and we want to use those 3 primarily in the foundry, but for larger events where we have a service, let's say Christmas, Easter, they want to bring all those packs into the main stage area and be able to use that as well. So we said, okay, well, we can do that. So since they want to stay with the same basic system, they still have their 1 control unit. As you can see, we added using fiber going to the foundry. So this would be located in that area we called the foundry earlier. Went ahead and built on the Atrium Chapel RT, although when they do deploy it, that won't be active because it won't be plugged in. They'll basically have the main transceiver and the foundry. So in order to keep them kind of separate, what we did is we essentially created a couple of more conferences and some more, conferences over here and some more profiles, which I'm sure they'll add on to. I only did really 1 profile to make it operate in the foundry area. So now we have specific conferences for each area. So we've got Atrium conferences, A and B, and we've got foundry conferences, A and B. And then if you come to the profiles, you'll see I created a foundry profile for Mr. Banks. So what we did here is essentially use the foundry conferences in that foundry profile. So now he can go from the main stage with his original profile, with where they have their 6 packs that operate, and he can go walk all the way over to the foundry, dial up his foundry profile, and now he's communicating within that system on the foundry. So that really shows you the flexibility of being able to do that. Now, when they have their services at Christmas or Easter and they want to have all 9 packs in the 1 main stage area, they can essentially bring that RT over from the foundry, plug it in either through the daisy chain on the main stage, since we've already built that, or they can bring it in and plug it into the port here on the control unit itself. And now you can have all 9 packs being used in that main stage area. So once again, it makes it very flexible to do what you want to do by signing conferences, creating profiles. Very, very convenient, very, very easy way to add onto your system and make it flexible and to use it for different types of events even. So that's a real world example. That's a really good example of that.
Yeah, Art, one thing I wanted to mention on there is that once you set that up, there's no need for even a computer on. Any volunteer could go in, they could dial up their pack or from the computer if you wanted to, and automatically change those profiles. So the setup is fairly straight ahead, but the ability to use it without technical knowledge, without RF knowledge, is really a benefit to a lot of our users.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've heard from several of our large customers, as Gary knows, is they say the great thing about the system is we can just deploy it, turn it on, and it works. And that's even before you plug in your computer to view everything through CrewWare. Through CrewWare. So you can, as Gary mentioned, you can operate the system fine without it. Obviously, some of the larger systems would require that, but a system like Grace Church doesn't require it really. Just turn it on and it works.
All right. So I think that wraps up what we've wanted to cover today. We don't actually have any questions at this point, which means either I know some of our users that are online right now, we can see your names are people who are familiar with the system, or you guys have just done a great job explaining it.
I think it's fun.
Yeah, this session, as well as yesterday's, this is a repeat live that we did yesterday also. They will be available on our website if you want to watch them later, or if you want to pass it off to somebody else to review. And if you ever have the need, we're very happy to do one-on-one training, any three of us, if you want to go through something specific or go through the whole thing like we did, but one-on-one, feel free to reach out to us. sales@appliantechnology.com will reach all three of us.
And
Okay.
with that, I guess
All
we're
right.
done.
All right, everybody, thank you very much for joining us and staying with us for the hour and a half. We appreciate it, and we hope we will see you back again.
Stay safe, everybody.
Bye, everyone.